So, welcome everybody to another episode of Balm to the Soul. My name is Natasha Joy Price, and with me we have got a super new guest to the podcast, and her name is Lisa Erickson. So, welcome, Lisa. Thank you so much for supporting Balm to the Soul.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for being interested in these topics and sharing them.
Oh no, I find it all very fascinating. So Lisa's business, and as normal, I'll put it up underneath the podcast when I upload it. But Lisa's business is called Enlightened Energetics, and she's an energy worker, an author, and a meditation teacher, which all sounds wonderful. But what we're going to mainly talk about, I think, is chakra empowerment. Is that right?
Yes, if that's of interest, that's my
Oh,
favorite topic.
absolutely. I think it sounds fascinating. So talk us through it. How does that work?
Yeah. Well, so we have an energy body. According to many traditions all around the world, they posit this idea of an energy body or subtle body that I think of as this intermediary layer between our physical body, our psyche, and our spirit. And so then chakra or energy center, and they're the energy centers in certain mappings of the energy body. Those chakras are really, they're connected both to our physical body. And so there's energy healing traditions that work with them for physical healing. And then they're also connected to aspects of our psyche, different emotions and patterns, and aspects of our spirit. And so you also have spiritual traditions that use them. So when we talk about healing from a lot of things, or personal development, or growth, or holistic approach, the chakras are a fantastic modality because it's built right in that they have a connection both to your physical and to your psyche and emotions and to your spirit. And depending on what you're interested in, you can kind of access them through any number of methods. So that's kind of the top level.
And there are not just the 7 chakras that everybody knows about, are there? There's a few hundred chakras in our energy system.
Yeah, and there's different mappings that have come from different traditions. The core central channel, I have seen mappings that go anywhere from 6 to 10. So the 7 chakras are the most common that intersect across all those traditions. Some add in a few, and so it can go as high as 10. And then you have minor chakras, or the smaller body chakras that branch off throughout your body. And then in other systems, there are out-of-body energy centers. We have like an egg of energy around us, and there are other systems. So I also work with a 12 chakra system from one of my mentors. So, the 7 is the most accessible. It's the place to start. It's like the major organ systems, if we're thinking of it in terms of physical health. But you can really branch off into a lot of any part of the body, or even out-of-body energy centers.
And these energy centers, you talk about them going through the physical, and I've always known them as an opening at almost like a funnel, with an opening at the front and an opening at your back as well, isn't it? So you've got that whole stretch of
Well, it's interesting because, yes, one of my main teachers, Cindy Dale, I don't know if you're familiar with her or not. Yeah, she talks about this funnel, the center channel, and then there's a funnel to the front and the back. Some traditions talk more in terms of a wheel, and it's spinning one way or the other. I really think of all of these are visual metaphors for accessing things that are really beyond concept. And it depends on what you're using them for. So I find the funnel very helpful a lot for trauma, because the back is often about the past and or receiving almost spiritual support. The front is more about how we're relating, or what energies we're bringing forth into this life. So I find that funnel really helpful for that. In terms of spiritual, like if someone's using the chakras for awakening, a lot of those traditions use this wheel metaphor, and it's like, how fast is it spinning? So I feel like these different visuals are helpful, depending on what you're trying to do. It's really like a technology that you can use for a lot of different things.
Right, sure. So although you might have a different visualization, basically what the chakra is doing is moving the energy through that particular space in your energy field.
Yes, and energy also moves between them. So I work a lot with the pathways. It's like the upward pathway is often considered the growth awakening pathway. The downward pathway is the manifesting pathway.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about feminine and masculine energy, and we all have both, there's also pathways like the odd number chakras. I think of as the masculine pathway, the even as the feminine. So there's movement of energies between chakras, and then within each chakra, there's movement front to back. The inner core versus the outer, whether it's receiving or emanating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different elements going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember reading once that, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was talking about that chakras have a consciousness. What do you think about that concept?
I think of them more as each being an aspect of consciousness. So we think about the heart, this is connected to love. And so everything linked to love, it can be universal, spiritual, unconditional love. It can be individual love, and then all of our obstructions, challenges, lessons, and joys around that, including self-love, self-worth, compassion.
Yeah.
All these things, navel chakra power, and all these different things around that. And so there's I think of them as all having this kind of consciousness to them, but not separate consciousnesses in the way I think of them in terms of consciousness being linked to a being. We're the being, and the chakras are reflections. And you could say in any given moment, our overall consciousness is a reflection of what's going on energetically in our chakras in that moment.
Yeah. Excellent. So if you're working with a new client and somebody comes along and they have an issue, how do you start with the chakras? What do you work through with them?
Yeah, I work first we do a tune in, just to tune in, and to some extent it depends on if someone is familiar with the chakras or not, because you can work with them even if you have no familiarity. But I might change my language, and we might be much more body based. And because I work a lot with individuals who've experienced trauma, I tend to stay very body based anyway. So I tend to be very cautious. It's not like a lot of, we're not receiving messages and things like that, because that can very quickly become bypassing for a trauma survivor. So I'm very much like, what are you experiencing now in your body? Like if they've come to me because of anxiety that they feel is linked to trauma, I will ask for what, first after a little history, okay, when you're in a moment where you're experiencing this anxiety, where do you actually feel it in your body? Let's get very into the body, which we know from other modalities is really important for working with trauma. It's stored in the body. And then we might be working with the closest chakra, or very often we're working with root and sacral. I feel like every client, trauma or no, we're working with the lower chakras first, because you do need to have that foundation, and there's almost always something to be worked with those lower chakras.
Yeah.
So then we might be doing visualization, sound work, affirmations that are associated with those lower chakras. I'm doing a transmission in the session, but usually asking them then to do a very brief 1 or 2 minute empowerment each day on those lower chakras between sessions. Because to me, getting back to our original theme, chakra empowerment, that's what it is. It is not about me just transmitting. I want people to be awakening and know how to do it themselves. That's what brings about lifelong change. And then the chakras become a tool you can use in your daily life, right in the middle of your day.
And I suppose you have to get familiar with how they feel now and how they feel as they shift in energy, so that you can feel the shift and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, and that's the main value of working with someone initially, is one, they're helping you see and clear out those obstructions and learn, but also, we're connected. So as I'm working with you, you're going to feel it more than on your own at first. But now you have a reference point. It's just like working with a physical trainer in, for physical health. Now you have a reference point, and you'll get stronger and stronger at doing it on your own.
Yeah. Really, really interesting. So you would mainly work with affirmations, you say meditation, get them connected to the chakras. Do you work with color with the chakras as well?
Yes, I do have a lot of visualizations that are color and symbol based, right? We might be using a certain flower, or a certain symbol. I work with the elements a lot. The chakras are linked to the elements, so earth, the lower 4, earth, water, fire, air. So we might be working with visualizations associated with that. Because I work on Zoom, that is how I work, but I may be recommending someone work with a certain crystal or get out into nature to experience more earth or water outside of the session. But
Yeah.
that's not my main modality. My main modality is what I call contemplative energy work, focusing, working with color and affirmations. And as you say the affirmation, trying to feel that new state that you're
Yeah.
affirming.
Yeah. I find it all so fascinating. I love the chakras, and you know what, you know, lots of people know about the chakras, but it. I don't think they work well. You know, they don't work on a daily basis with them. And I'm always saying to people, you need to start doing energy healing every day, whatever you do, whether it's just something, but you need to start checking in on your energy and get used to, you know, it needs to become a habit, doesn't it? You need to, it's not a quick fix.
It
It's,
really is like taking care of your physical body.
yeah,
They tell
exactly.
us get some movement every day,
Yeah,
right?
clean your
Whether
teeth.
it's nutrition,
Yeah,
yeah, you do. It really is just like taking care of your physical body, and you'll get better and better at it over time.
yeah,
Sure.
definitely. And do you see when you're working with people's chakra, or maybe they see it as well, but you know, people talk about their accords can become attached to chakras and they become, Barbara Brennan, I don't know if you're familiar with her book, but she talks
Yes.
about some chakras can become quite blown out and some can become quite jagged through life experiences or perhaps illness as well. Do you see that
Yes.
often with your
Yeah, I
clients?
mean, all of the above. Sometimes you're working with obstructions. Sometimes you're working with fragmentation. Sometimes you're working with blocks, meaning that the chakra doesn't. Sometimes you're working with a hyperactive chakra. There's all different things. And then there's lines and cords. And so there's normal energy lines that we have with the relationships in our life that are just part of being alive. I work a lot with helping people manage those lines. So there's
Yeah.
lines between mothers and children and spouses, but it is very important to learn how to close those lines, to
Mm.
cut them if a relationship has ended, and to feel you have the right to manage the energy flowing through those lines. So that's a big piece of it for women, especially. Because we're often conditioned to take responsibility for other people's emotions. So
Yeah.
in a relationship, that line may be just we're constantly kind of receiving other people's emotions and managing it for them. And
Yeah.
so we have to learn how to manage that line. Then there's chords, and I use, people use words differently, lines and chords. I use chords really only to mean dysfunctional lines.
Yeah.
Some people don't. And it really is like almost a contract, an unconscious contract, usually codependent, can be, or a dysfunctional, like we're going to be addicts together, right? It can
Yeah.
be that kind of cord, or you owe me all your life energy. You know, it's like patterned in there, and those really have to be cut. But it can take so much time for
Mm.
someone to see that. And it really is just like addiction. You can't actually cut a cord for someone. You can, but it will not last until they're actually to the point where they really have seen that. So if someone doesn't see the cord and doesn't, we will be working on other things first, and hopefully they
Yeah.
come to a place where they're
Sure.
ready to change that. Yeah.
Yeah. I when I got divorced, I there was a scenario that happened, and I was very aware that a cord from my heart just let go at that point, but it was actually a physical pain. I
Yes.
really felt like I was having a chest pain, but I was
Yes.
very aware of what it was. But actually, after it subsided, the difference in how I felt towards him was like chalk and cheese. It was quite
Yeah.
extraordinary, really. So letting go of those cords is incredibly powerful. If it can be painful, but incredibly powerful as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So much interesting things you said in there. I'm wondering also if you, after, did you realize how much of his energy you had been processing also?
Yes, I think so. I think that was all part and parcel of it. It was very much about holding space for someone else and you know, taking on his worries and anxieties and just holding space for him, basically. But
Yeah.
what shocked me the most was the actual physical pain. It was like something had been ripped out,
Yeah.
literally. So,
And that isn't unusual. I think
um,
also sometimes it's just intense emotional pain, sometimes in the moment when you're cutting, sometimes the next day. And it's then can be hard to go through it. And this is why you do have relationships where people break up, get back together, break up. Like you can be so sure it's time to end this, you do it. But then it really is like going through some withdrawal, and getting through that stage is the hardest. Then on the other side, you're like, oh, wow, why didn't I do that years ago?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
but that's life. That's our growth process, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I remember once doing a Reiki session, and I actually, for the first time ever, when I visually could see the solar plexus, which was a beautiful yellow, and it had a cord attached. And I spooked myself. I was slightly taken aback that I was seeing it so clearly.
Yeah.
But it was a great affirmation. It was an absolute affirmation that what we're talking about exists, and it's powerful to do that work.
Yeah. It is very powerful. And it sounds like for you and for me, I feel like it's best in combination with some sort of therapeutic approach. So
Sure.
you do have the psychological understanding of the shifts you need to make, and you are supporting them with energy work. It's like the energy work both speeds it up and affirms it.
Yeah.
And so it's a great combination when you're going through something big in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So combining it with like Reiki, it's a very supportive therapy for them to sort of understand what's happening and be gentle with themselves, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because it can
Yeah,
be,
and some
it
sort
can
of
be
talk
painful.
support, some sort of talk
Yeah.
narrative support also where you're understanding what is going on in your life. I think it's both. It's like I know people who've done a lot of talk therapy and they come to me and they're like, I understand why I am the way I am and how it unfolded, but I still have the patterns. And so they need more of
Yeah.
the energy work at that point in their life. But I also have people, usually younger, who just want to do energy work. Just help me heal my solar plexus. They don't want to go into, they haven't done talk therapy or narrative. And then it very easily becomes spiritual bypassing. It
Yeah.
very easily becomes sort of maybe you learn how to get high off certain chakras, but you keep making the same mistakes over and over. You
Yeah.
don't actually repattern, because what we're really trying to do if you have a pattern is repattern,
Yeah.
create a
Absolutely.
new pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. I've recently had an experience of seeing um, the solar plexus chakra, and basically it almost looked like this particular client was vomiting out of the solar plexus. It was just like it was just letting go of all this
Mm.
um, rubbish that she no longer needed to hold on to. So
Mhm.
that was quite a startling image that I had in one of my sessions, but so interesting because
Yeah.
it's all about self-worth, and
Yeah.
obviously it's almost like you have debris sometimes in the energy field.
Yeah. And that chakra in particular is so linked to boundaries and our ability to hold energetic boundaries. And
Mm,
so many physical issues are holistically linked, and there's always a physical cause too. I'm definitely one that believes in, there's multiple layers to physical
yeah,
disease,
absolutely,
but
yeah.
so many are like related to things we're holding in our body. I work with a lot of sexual trauma survivors, and I see so many ovarian cysts and uterine fibroids.
Yeah.
And I wish there was a study on, is it a higher prevalence amongst, I don't, I can't prove that. It's only anecdotal among my client base. Those are benign. So in that sense, they are less harmful than a cancer.
Mm,
But to me, they're like almost the body's way of bundling negativity. And as we heal, and even once they get those removed, it moves the emotional healing process along, and then we can get to a place maybe where they're not recurring through a combination of physical and energetic treatment. So it's
mm.
really interesting the way the body does that. And digestive issues are almost always boundary issues. They're taking on energy from others. If someone is telling me they're nauseous all the time, right? It's so that's the first place I go is, okay, whose energy is impacting you in that way.
Yeah, and maybe talk about protection as well. Do you do protection with your clients? Because
Yeah, I really focus more on boundaries. And for that, I have what's called the second skin. I focus on the root and the navel as creating this second skin on top of our physical skin. So important for anyone who identifies as an empath. Uh, and really for anyone, I feel most women, we have a more sensitive energy body. We're raised to feel responsible for others' emotions. So it's like we're almost inside out from what we should be. We're constantly sensing everyone's energy. And that can be okay if you're not also taking it in.
yeah,
But also most of the time, we don't need to be quite that hyper vigilant. We don't need to be scanning constantly everyone else's emotions. So with the second skin, it's like a filter where you're like still emotionally aware, not taking things in, and really trying to affirm that as, this is my new default. This is the way I walk around in the world, period,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Then on top of that, there's protection, perhaps for certain circumstances, but really just trying to create a new default. Like, this is the way I'm dressed every day.
yeah,
This energetic skin.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
I find that with a lot of clients, it's, maybe they've been poorly or they've been in a low state, and then they pick up energetically from other people, and then they're carrying around other people's stuff all the time as well. So we talk about protection. The other thing is grounding. A lot of clients I find are not quite in their body for some
Yeah, I think
reason.
this is number one right now.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I think anyone who has, it depends on your childhood situation, but if, really honestly, there aren't that many people that get to grow up in a childhood home that leaves them feeling completely safe in their body and grounded. It's unfortunate, but it is the way it is. It's like if you had any level of dysfunction or any sense of not being completely safe in your home, whether there was abuse, maybe not even abuse, but a home where there was alcoholism or any mental health issues, where you had to come in as a child and be like, okay, what mood is everyone in today? What's it like
yeah,
today? Or you had to at times disassociate because there was fighting going on. You find ways to leave your body in order to survive, and then that becomes habitual. And so
yeah,
so many people have to relearn how to be in their body.
yeah,
Then right now we have the added complication of our phones and so much screen time, and it really, like, literally all that eye stimulation. We're so out of our physical.
yeah.
uh, and so, I think there's all of us, a lot more work getting back into our body and our senses.
Mm,
And that's, talking about boundaries. As I said, for me, boundaries is all about root and navel. So if you're not grounded, that root chakra is not fully activated, you basically can't have empowered boundaries. So that's the work. You need to be fully in your body for that root chakra to be doing what it's meant to do, which is partially protection.
yeah. So it's all part and parcel,
It's all the same pattern. Yeah.
connected. Yeah, definitely. So if somebody wants to start working with their chakras, what do you recommend for them?
Yeah. It depends on their interest, if they're coming for healing or spiritual. If we're doing a session, we're going to talk and I'm going to decide which chakra to start with. And if I don't know at all, we're going to do root or heart.
Yeah,
And often that's where I'll start, is root or heart, partially because of everything we just talked about. Almost everyone needs a little root focus to get more in their body. But the root chakra is hard to actually feel. And the chakra that people are most likely to feel is the heart.
yeah,
And that is also a centering chakra. So root and heart will be where I'll almost always start, and very simple exercises, maybe holding your hand there, feeling the light, imagining light there, saying some affirmations around worth, and then down into the body, the root chakra, focusing at the tailbone and saying affirmations around safety in the body. And then, there's other visualizations you can use. Usually someone will feel something in the heart within a few sessions of doing that. And then that's encouraging to them, right? They're like, oh, I felt warmth, I felt tingle. And that's how they begin to discover that subtle body link to their
yeah.
physical.
I often use the heart. Because I often think that the heart is like, it's almost like the filter of your washing machine. There's often heart sludge, I would call it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there are bigger things like, that button that's come off, or a clip or whatever. So I always I always teach people, it's almost like a flash flood, and just to keep washing through the heart chakra. Because to me, I feel like it is almost like the filter, but it's also a real main, it's a sort of really main point of this sort of organic bit of machinery that we've got.
Yeah, it is the center point, right? In the seventh system. And well, and for most people also in their lives, it's where the themes of the heart chakra is where they're the most aware, right? We're very relationship focused, whether it's romantic relationships or family or friends. Like, we're very focused on what's going on with the people in our lives, or lack thereof, if we're lonely and isolated. So when you get people talking about their lives, it's very often about other people in their lives. And so it's very easy to access the heart issues. So it usually is where people want to start. We want to feel love.
Yeah,
we want to feel loved. Yeah.
And I know you do meditation. You're a meditation teacher as well. So do you sort of get your clients to sometimes meditate on their different chakras and just go in there and see
Yeah,
what
I mean, I have different groups of clients. So for those that are really coming to me, say for sexual trauma healing, what I have them do between sessions, some people might call meditation. I call them activations, and that's what I call them in my book, because you can just do them for short periods of time. And that word meditation can scare people off. I'll have a lot of people say, oh, I can't meditate. I've tried meditation. My mind just goes all over, which it does for everyone, right? Like that is what meditation. But so I will be shy about that word with certain people, and be like, can you do this chakra activation for a couple? But it is actually, really, if we talk about meditation, a form of meditation being concentrating on a chakra and a visual there, that's what it is. And then we might be adding an affirmation, we might be adding some movement. Then there are clients that are really coming to me for kundalini activation, for spiritual movement. And then there are more specific practices that are around that. And so I think it varies. Yeah, it varies, but it is, in my mind, I call it contemplative energy work, but other people might call it micro chakra meditations, right? Yeah.
I love meditation, chakra meditations. I think you can get such insight, and you really get to know the sort of how your energy is set at this moment in time, sort of thing. You get to know your energy, and I think that's so important. There's also other concepts about the chakras being portals, like to other dimensions. To what do you think about that?
Well, I absolutely believe that to be the case. I mean, chakra meditation in my personal practice, is my main form of meditation. I began in a kundalini-based chakra tradition, and now I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, and I study within that tradition. And in both, the first was a Hindu-based, this is Tibetan Buddhist-based. There is this idea of the chakras really as representing states of awakening, states of awareness at their very inner core. To access that inner core, it's like all the other layers of that chakra need to be healed, or to a certain level. You can force the light through a chakra, but then that is when you end up with things like kundalini crisis. Sometimes people call it that, or disassociation, right? If you're too much in the upper chakras, you might have great mystic experiences, but not be functional in life, right? So I think it is about this balance. So I absolutely do believe every chakra is a dimension. It's a doorway into spiritual states. We can be shown beautiful things. It's also something to approach with some caution, in terms of really focusing first on that psychological self and physical healing. It's like, this is the vehicle. This body and psyche is the vehicle for experiencing all of that. And if the vehicle is not quite strong enough, it's like a light bulb that gets blown out. It's like plugging a 60-watt light bulb into a 100-watt socket or something, and it'll just blow out. So you have to have this vehicle, this light bulb, in a good place first.
I actually think I have had a kundalini experience. At the time I was having it, I hadn't got a clue that's what it was. But having listened to people talking, and all sorts of reading about all sorts, I realized that I think that's what happened. But at that point in time, I'd been doing energy work for 12 years. So I didn't have you know, not being able to sleep at night or anything like that. And I very quickly got it under control, if you like.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a great analogy, the light bulb, because I think it was only because I'd been doing energetic work for 12 years that I was able to not control it, because you can't control it, but
Process it. I say integrate
yeah,
it probably.
yeah, and
And
get
that's
back
it.
to a balance. Yeah.
And that's it. You just want to be able to play. I think Kundalini is moving through all of us all the time. It really is the energy of growth.
Yeah.
So people are having, it's moving, you know, what we call Kundalini experience is something more mystic. And when that happens, yes, if you're prepared for it, you don't have to know the technology. You're going to just process and integrate it.
Yeah.
And be okay. And that is really, it isn't something to be scared of, right? It's a
No.
beautiful
Yeah.
transformation if you're in that place.
Yeah. Mine was triggered by a shock, having a
Yeah, that too.
shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I suspect sometimes your trauma victims will have had a similar experience, you know, that they then have to process as well. They have to sort of,
Yeah, and in that definition of trauma that's often used, which is unintegrated experience.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes the two can be trauma and Kundalini together is too much for people.
yeah,
Meaning, if they have things unintegrated and they are consciously trying to activate the Kundalini, it comes up against a block that person isn't ready to face, and that's when you experience issues. So when someone who has trauma in their background, I'm always really gentle with anything that
yeah,
might
sure.
trigger the Kundalini. But then when you get to a place when you've worked through it, you can handle it. It's
Yeah,
really like Kundalini is this river just trying to move through any dam that it comes across.
yeah.
So as long as you've been working through all your blocks, you're good. If there's stuff still in there that needs healing, you have to address that first.
Yeah, it was it was interesting. Mainly I was just very aware that my energy field was expanding, and I could feel rushing, like a rushing noise in my ears as well. And then when I closed my eyes, I could just see lines and lines of symbols. It was
Oh,
almost,
wow. Like a
yeah,
download almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was so interesting. Another experience I had, which is, and it ties in with what we're talking about, is following a yoga session.
Mm.
Um, we were all calming down, you know, you do the calm down. And I literally exited my body out of my third eye.
Mm.
Um, and I completely spooked myself again. Obviously, that's a trend with me. And I was like, no, I don't want to go out, thank you. But what I was going into was a very different. I felt like I was underwater, and then I realized I wasn't underwater. It was very viscous, and so I'm thinking that perhaps it was a different dimension.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
But it's
fascinating.
actually a good thing in my view that you were like, no, I don't want this right now. I'm coming back.
Yeah,
It may have been fear-based, but next time maybe it won't be, and you'll go further. Because it is so important to have that sense of I have a choice.
yes,
This is my choice. Because so often people have this sense that it's not their choice, and that can really complicate things. So it's good to have this sense of, no, I have a choice of when I'm ready to experience something. But yeah, that watery feeling that, yeah,
yeah.
it
It was
does feel
very.
like a certain
I have a
dimension.
very logical mind though, and I'm a lawyer as well, so I've got never the twain have
Right
met.
and left brained.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it was a bit like, oh, well, okay, if I go out there, how do I actually get back in? It was, you know, I was
Yeah.
very conscious of like I was trying to work it out logically, which I'm assuming you really can't, because I just haven't got that understanding in our brains as to what I was seeing, sort of thing. So
Well, that is the hard part. I also am sort of that way. I'm a very systems oriented
yeah,
person. I mean, it has its benefits in terms of after the fact, you're trying to organize. It's probably why you do what you do right now, right? You try to help understand and help people
yeah,
understand different things. But yes, in the experience, you have to be able to let go to some extent and let it defy,
yeah,
and then assess it later.
yeah,
There may be some symbols and things like that you can read, and then there may be certain parts of it that are purely experiential beyond the reach
yeah. And
of your mind.
actually, the experiences that I've had, like the seeing the cord, the kundalini, the exiting, have never repeated. So
Mm.
it's quite much to my frustration, because I'd love to be able to do that now that I know I can come back. But maybe that is, that's teaching me something in myself as well. Next time, maybe I will just go for it. I don't know, whatever it may
Yeah,
be.
maybe so. And it's also about what is your sort of alignment with your purpose? Like, what purpose have you set? If what you wanted to do was just line and cord work with other people, maybe that would be like that would be developing as a gift, right? But maybe it isn't necessary, right? So it's sort of like, what is your main gift? What are you? I feel like we begin. There's a million different energy gifts, right?
Yeah.
What's the point of having all of them? None. I mean, so it's like,
No,
what is your intention? Who do you want to help and how? And that's what develops, is
yeah.
what I usually see. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been a real searcher and really interested. So maybe what they were showing me was a little bit of affirmation for what I was perhaps
Different
looking for.
paths,
Yeah.
different gifts and different paths. Yeah.
Possibilities,
Possibilities.
yeah. And like you say, I don't need to go down that route if I don't want to. But
Yeah.
so fascinating. It's been so lovely talking to you, Lisa. The things you talk about, I talk about. So it's
Great.
quite
Good. Good.
nice
Good.
to meet
Wonderful.
someone who is very much energetically on the same, vocabulary. So
Yeah.
really interesting. And the work you do sounds fascinating.
Well, thank you for having me and for helping people explore
Yeah.
these options. Really, just so many people in the world need tools, right? And
Yeah.
so it's
Oh,
just
yeah,
opening to
everybody.
all the different kinds of ways to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll put details of your website, because I know you've written a couple of books, haven't you, that are up there and people can go and have a look. One of them is
Yeah, the
Chakra.
main one is chakra empowerment for women. Yeah. And that is available in the UK as well, and really all over. So that one anyone should be able to find.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for supporting Balm to the Soul. Like I say, that's really lovely. And
Thank you.
if you've enjoyed watching us or listening to us, then please like and subscribe and share. And I'll be back again with another episode shortly. Thank you.